Welcome to the Doing Life Together podcast. I'm Jonathan.
I'm Owen.
I'm Eli.
And I'm Evan.
This week, we're going to be talking about the fact that you only get one life. And if I asked almost everyone, they would say that honestly, they desire to live the best life possible and that they really want to win at life. But if we asked people, what is your definition of winning? I bet we would get a whole bunch of different responses. And if we ask people, how's it going? Or how are you making sure that you're working towards a successful life? Even more random assortment of responses. So today we're going to discuss how to live life more intentionally so that you can increase your confidence that you're moving in the direction through life that you really want to. And that you're winning by a definition that you create and that you came up with yourself. So it's not a definition that the world has defined for you. And the way we're going to get there is we are thinking this is probably going to be 2 episodes, so there'll be a break point at some point. But of course, we're going to start with the random question of the day. And then we're going to talk about the Arch Impacts for Life framework. There's basically 4 parts. And the first one is authenticity. That's all about what is your source of truth, what is your design, and what is your purpose. Second thing is about results. So how do you achieve results that are actually meaningful to you? Third thing is around community. And the fourth is around building habits. So if you put all that together, you're going to create a life of impact. That's why I call it Arch Impacts. So along the way, the guys are going to ask some questions. Typically, if you've listened before, this is where we say we're not dictating a specific plan for your life. But since this is all about life planning, that would be a lie. So we're going to modify it a little bit. I do want to say that we are giving guidance on how to live your best life. So I would say the 4 pillars is pretty direct. If you want to have a great life, you need to be worried about becoming the best version of you, achieving meaningful results, being in community, healthy communities, and developing habits so you can do all that sustainably. But how you go about applying it, as you're going to learn throughout the episode, is totally up to you. So please take a listen, reflect, decide how this best applies to you, and then make your best life happen. All right, Eli, random question of the day.
When people come to you for help, what do they usually want help with? For me, people usually want help with their math homework when they come to help or come to me for help.
That's fair. I would say that's true.
A lot of people, when they come to help for me, it's in sports, whether it's baseball or soccer.
I get some people, mostly my friends, asking me for help with what to do when they're in a conflict with other friends or stuff like that.
So you're the sage old man in the group of young people.
I mean, I don't know about that, but
all right. People usually come to me for advice on leadership and their career, sometimes parenting, pretty much relationship stuff. So I've had enough bad and good experiences with relationships. So that's what people come to me about, which kind of leads in nicely. Did you show that one to the camera, Eli? I wasn't really paying attention. I don't want people to think that's fake. Yep, you did. So this is a great opportunity to remind everybody we are on YouTube. Arch Impact Studio is our YouTube handle. All of this content is on there, as well as anywhere you find podcasts. So thanks for listening today. So today we're going to talk about living intentionally. And if you don't live intentionally, the example I like to use is that you're basically gambling with your life. So you're just taking a bunch of chances, taking risks that really are unnecessary because you can take time to know enough about yourself that you can avoid having to gamble with your life. Basically, the idea is a life well lived is a life where you have a good sense of well-being. And well-being, I like to define that as where you are personally healthy in all the major aspects. So you're physically healthy, you're emotionally healthy, you're mentally healthy, you're spiritually healthy, you're relationally healthy. So anytime we talk about living a good life, that's what we're talking about. You have good well-being in a variety of areas. A lot of people don't think about life and what it all means until they're at the end. And there's lots of stories about people on their deathbed, and I hate to be morbid, but I think it's important. And they talk about their regrets or, oh, I wish I would have done more of, I wish I would have thought of, I wish I would have. But I also think it's not just about the end. It's also like daily living. So a lot of people they spend a lot of their life now masking their discomfort or their lack of intentionality in life with just a variety of different things. And, maybe their phone, everyone blames the phone these days. You guys know that. We talk about it at home from time to time, but they blame their phone or an addiction or whatever. But really, if they were more intentional with their life, I would venture to say that a lot of people would make different choices day to day. And so they'd have to mask things less often. The good news is that, as we're going to talk about in this episode, you have a lot more control over this than you think you do. And there's a really easy framework for thinking about the elements of what it is to live a healthy life. Anyone have any questions before we get too far into this?
So in the beginning, you talked about your arch structure. Could you just go in more depth about that, I guess?
Yeah, right on. So the arch structure is 4 things. It's 4 keystone habits or ideas or mindsets, principles, whatever language makes you comfortable. But it's just this idea that you should become your most authentic self. So the greatest version of yourself. So we'll talk about that. That's the A in arch. R is about getting results. So the results that matter most to you. That's the R. That's what we'll talk about second. Then we'll talk about communities or the groups of people that you need in your life so that you can live a successful life. Because one of the key elements is this idea that successful, happy, healthy people filled with joy aren't just achieving results on their own. They have people around them. And then the 4th one is habits. And if you do those 4 things, you will leave a life of impact, which is why I call it Arch Impacts. And that's the name I use. So those are the 4 concepts. So we're going to jump into the first one. The first one is authenticity. So the A stands for authenticity. So in order to achieve your goals in a sustainable way, you really need to have an awareness of how you are designed. And so when I talk about design, I think about the skills you do or don't have. I think about what is your source of truth. I think about what are the things that speak to your heart. So what are the things that break your heart? What are the things that you care more about than anybody else? And when you know these things, and we can argue if you want, is it divine creation that we're all have this unique design? Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it evolution? Is it learned behavior, right? We can argue about what it is, but I think it would be unwise to argue that each individual we encounter is a unique creation that has different skills and abilities and gifts, shortcomings, motivations, all those things. And so we can argue the source, but I think that's a waste of time because we're not going to be arguing whether or not design exists. We would just be arguing how it happens. So we got to assume that design exists. And like I mentioned before, design starts with your source of truth. So as you go through life, you got to understand what is your source of truth. And then from that source, what are your absolute truths? So what are those things that you're not going to allow yourself to evaluate, but you filter everything through that sense of this is the truth. And is this thing that I'm learning, does it match that truth? So so that source of truth is important because it allows you to evaluate new information. Because that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today is experiencing life, learning new things is a huge part of figuring out your design, figuring out so much of this, you have to be experiencing life. So that's really important. Step 1, what is your source of truth? Then we talk about how are you going to interact with your world? And that's what I call the s'more profile. So imagine the delicious campfire treat of graham crackers, the mallow, and then a chocolate and then another graham cracker on top. That is a s'more, S-M-O-R-E. This is a s'more, S-M-O-R-E-E. And when I talk about your s'more profile, it's kind of your default way of doing things or default way of living. And what I want you to know is that the s'more stands for strength. So what are the things that you're really, really good at? Stands for motivation. So why do you do the things that you do? What motivates you to behave in the way that you do? Then opportunities. So what are the things that you're just frankly not very good at and you should stop trying to prove otherwise. Then we're going to talk about how do you like to be rewarded or recognized, intrinsically, extrinsically, so internally, externally. How do you like people to recognize you when you do a good job? Energy. So what are the activities that you do that give you energy? What are the activities that you do that take energy away? So for example, I'm a pretty significant introvert. So being around people takes the energy out of me. So when I get de-energized, I got to go away from people to get re-energized. And then finally, the other E, emotions. So how do you show up emotionally? What do you go to? Are you a sad person? Are you an angry person? Are you tend to be happy, laughing a lot? So what are your emotions? And the third part of authenticity is about your purpose. So I call that the thing that speaks to or breaks your heart. It's something that you're more passionate about than anybody else. Purpose is kind of a loaded term, so I worry about using it sometimes because people like freak out and they become paralyzed. Like, I can't move until I figure out what my one true thing is. It's not super helpful to live in fear of messing up because you really can't necessarily mess it up too bad. You can take wrong turns, you can move in the wrong direction, but eventually you get back on course. And I think that's really important. So when you talk about purpose, what you're really trying to figure out is what's that thing that you just care about more than anybody else? What is that thing that you just love or want or desire to see happen or become better? And that's kind of, just so as you're figuring out your purpose, it's really important to just be moving, to trying out new experiences. Because the reality is, that's the only way you're going to whittle it down is to try things and get experiences and become familiar with what you do and don't like, what you enjoy doing, what you are passionate about, what people group or thing you want to make a positive impact for. So you really just got to get out and experience life. I think a lot of times when people get confused about their purpose or what they want to do with their lives, it's because they haven't experienced enough life to just narrow the choices down. They're just looking at the entire world and they just don't know enough about themselves, haven't experienced enough life to really get out there and begin to whittle down the choices. I said a lot again about authenticity being about your source of truth and having something to filter the way you experience life through. I talked about your SMORE profile, your strengths, your motivations, your opportunity areas, how you like to be rewarded, recognized. I talked about emotions, talk about how you get and lose energy, and then we talked about your purpose or the thing that speaks to your heart. So I'm just curious, guys, what any questions you guys might have?
Yeah. What are like some signs you could look for, or like anything that could help you try to figure out what your thing is at a younger age before you have like more experience on earth than like older people?
I think that's a really good question, Evan, because I know that can be really hard, especially at a young age, to really know what it is that you're looking to do. I know it's something we've talked about, and I think the reality is it's just I'm going to double down on this idea that you got to get out and experience life. It is really hard to sit in your room, not actually experiencing life, and figure out what it is that gets you all jazzed up. It's really hard to figure out what it is that you're good at. If all you're doing is sitting around scrolling on your phone, if all you're doing is sitting around watching Netflix, if all you're doing is watching other people live life, all you're doing is just feeding yourself versions of life that are good potentially for other people. But without actually experiencing them, you're not really going to know if it's good for you. So at a young age, I would say just get out and do stuff. Try things. Like you guys have been really good. Eli, you've done the music, you've done sports, you've done multiple sports, right? You guys have all tried different things. I just don't try to specialize your life too soon, or you'll have no shot at really, figuring it out, because you're going to assume that whatever you're specializing in is the thing. And if it doesn't work out that way, you're going to get confused or sad or angry because you put all this effort into something and you're like, I must be a failure. And I just, I hate that. So that would be something I say, even for adults, like get out and experience life. Stop sitting around waiting for the perfect moment to try something. If you really want to live your best life, you got to be out experiencing life. You got to be trying new things. You got to be experimenting, learning. That's what I would say. Is that helpful, Evan?
Yeah.
I want to talk about real quick the idea. I'm going to use an example to kind of pull this all the way through. So for me, the example of the thing that breaks my heart of the purpose. So I grew up as a child of divorce. That's really hard. I don't know. I'm sure other people can relate, but that can be very difficult. And part of that being a child of divorce meant that there were hard things that we had to overcome. So now that I've become an adult and I've become a parent, it's really hard for me to see kids in bad situations. That's what breaks my heart. So when I say purpose, I want to go out and I want to help young people experience a better life. Kids who are in bad situations, I want to help them live better. I just want to really be helpful to young people. So that's kind of my experience. I experienced some trauma in my childhood, which makes me say, hey, I don't want to see anyone else experience that. So I go out and I look for opportunities to helping other people. So that's really what we talk about when we say an example of what speaks to your heart and how experience will dictate that. And so we'll talk more in a little bit about the results I go after. So just to close that section out, I also just want to remind everybody that as much as I'm saying experience life, it's also about evaluating your experiences. So if all you're doing is out there experiencing life and doing the same thing over and over again and feeling miserable, like, hey, I wasn't good at piano. I'm not really good at guitar. I'm not good at drums. And maybe you should be evaluating the fact maybe you're just not musically inclined and you don't need to just keep trying different instruments. Maybe you're really good at sports. Maybe you're really good at theater. Maybe you're good at video games, right? But just you got to be evaluating those experiences or else they're not serving the purpose that we intended them to do. All right. Before we close out the section on authenticity, any more questions?
How will you be able to live a life of fullness and like based on arch and s'more before you find out what the thing that really hits your heart is?
Yeah, it's awesome. I think this is the second question you've asked. It's pretty much very similar. And it actually is similar to the types of questions that are in this book. So if you're on YouTube, I'm showing it. It's called 3 Big Questions That Change Every Teenager. It's by Kara Powell. I got all these bookshelves. I'm proud to say that I've probably read 90% of the books that are on these bookshelves, so they're not just for show. But anyway, in that book, the 3 Big Questions That Change Every Teenager, it's who am I? Where do I fit? And what difference can I make? And basically, as you're growing up, people are searching out the answers for who am I? So what is my design? Where do I belong? And what is my purpose? And so really, I'm not surprised you've asked so many questions now that are around that area because it's clearly what the research says is on your guys' heart. So I would just say it's really about pursuing something, right? Leverage the parts of your s'more profile that you're familiar with. So, hey, I know I'm really good at X. So you said sports earlier. People come to you for sports advice. Hey, I'm really good at kicking a soccer ball. So I'm going to pursue kicking a soccer ball with excellence. And as I'm in the process of pursuing kicking a soccer ball with excellence, I may begin to notice other things. Hey, I'm good at kicking a soccer ball with excellence, and I'm good at talking to people about how they can help or how they can kick a soccer ball with excellence. So now you've added another thing. Oh, not only am I good at kicking a soccer ball, but I'm capable of telling other people how to do it in a way that they're successful. So then you just start to begin to see, oh, I know more about myself because I'm out there pursuing something instead of sitting around waiting to find that perfect thing. So I would say that's before you know what that thing is, don't sit around idly waiting for it. Go out and pursue things, learn, evaluate what you're learning and get better. Is that helpful?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Sounds like my boy's dating talk. Jonathan Kauser, same idea.
Hey, life is super simple, guys.
I'm
It's a
confused.
set of behaviors that you can apply to almost anything, and you get better results. All right. All right. Does anyone remember what the R stands for in Arch?
Results.
All right. We got some participation. It's a lot of me talking today. All right. So results are part 2. So once you know your design, and these things are in order for a purpose, so don't misunderstand. It's not like random happenstance. You got to know your design and what speaks to your heart before you go out and achieve results. But results is the R. So that's the second thing. The second part of the model is results. I hate to break it to you, but as a human being, you are designed to do and achieve things. That's just the way life is. That's what you are intended to do. You are, as a human being, you are designed to achieve results. But I think it's a really important results section to talk about the 3 ways that we tend to get this wrong. So 3 false beliefs that we have about results is a good way to start here. First false belief: the goal of achievement today is to get to a place in the future where you don't have to achieve anything, where you can just live in complete comfort and control to create a future existence that is totally free from suffering. That is not a healthy view of the types of results you should be going after. Second big mistake is how people arrive at their definition of success or the definition of what results they need to achieve. And the third one is that the definition of success that they achieve is tied too closely to what I call appetites. And those are things that no matter how much you achieve, there's always more. So think about money, status, possessions, anything like that. There's always more out there that can be achieved. And so therefore it's really an appetite. And we'll talk more about that here in a second. So let's go through these one by one. I think it's really important. So the first one, there's this crazy belief. I don't know where it stems from, but that I think it actually stems from, what was that movie where the people, it was a Disney movie, I think, where they end up in like the mothership and they
WALL-E?
just, yes. And they just
Yeah.
sit around in those like easy chairs and they just roll around, right? You guys, if you've seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. And does anyone remember, what do those people look like in those rolly chairs?
There's some big people.
Large.
Look like blobs.
They look like blobs. They have no muscle tone. They just sit around. Remember, there's like that one scene where like the guy's straw falls just out of his mouth. Is this accurate? Did this really happen in the movie? And like he can't get the straw back in his mouth. Does that happen?
I don't
It's been
remember.
years since I've seen the movie, but
All right. There's something like that. There is some menial task that happens and the person just like, or maybe, no, they fall out of their chair. That's what it is. They fall out of their little scooter thing.
I believe that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that
it's just
sounds
like, insane. So I bring that up because that is essentially a movie that's talking about what happens if you get to a point in life where you are in complete comfort, complete control, and you don't need to do anything. You don't need to work hard. You don't need to achieve. And it didn't turn out to be that great of an existence. It was a bunch of overweight, lazy people who just fulfilled their pleasures, and that was it. So that was a bit of a rabbit hole, but hopefully for all the Disney fans, you now feel included. But can this idea that that's what you want to do is achieve things now so that someday in the future you don't have to achieve anything. You can stop achieving everything. Life's just going to be easy. It's just not a good way to go. You're built to achieve hard things. You're built to continuously be working towards becoming a better version of yourself, to help other people become better versions of themselves, to make the world better than you found it. That's just the way that you were created. And if you're not working on that, you tend to get into a series of self-destruction and chaos. Your brain is literally wired to thrive on doing hard things. If you're not doing hard things, you're not growing, you're not getting better, you're dying. It's all terrible stuff. So if you make the goal of achievement today to get to a point someday in the future where you don't have to achieve anything, you're not living right. It's a recipe for disaster. I would even go so far as to say this. So there are people in this world today who teach this idea that anytime you experience an uncomfortable emotion like sadness or anxiety or frustration, that it is a sign of poor mental health. Anytime you experience anything like that, they say, oh, there must be something wrong with you because you're just supposed to be happy all the time. You should do whatever it takes to no longer have any anxiety or frustration or sadness. And Owen, I see you shaking your head. I'd love to get some thoughts there, but it's actually true. There are now entire parts of society that say, hey, you feel any of those things? Oh my gosh, we should be worried about your mental health. And it's like, no, that's mental health is a crisis. I totally agree. And it's sad and it's real. And we should not, I'm not making fun of that. I talk to a counselor regularly because it helps me have better mental health. But this idea that anytime you experience any discomfort, emotionally or mentally, you're having a mental health crisis is just, it's not okay. It's not safe. It's bad medicine. So Owen, you had a reaction there. What's your reaction?
I just think that's insane for anybody to think that. Like, I don't know anybody that doesn't experience those, like almost every emotion out there at some point, fundamental parts of humanity. I don't know.
Yeah, but unfortunately, there are people who are trying to say that fundamental part of humanity is not natural. It's something that should be avoided, and it's really sad.
That's crazy.
So you're saying some people think any sadness at all is like means you have a problem with your mental health?
Yes, there are
even like external factors causing your sadness, like, you know, like your grandma dies. Now you're sad. Now you're having a mental health crisis. Is that what they think?
There are some people that would say if the sadness lasts longer than they think that it should, that yes, that you should self-medicate, that you should treat, that you should seek treatment because you just don't know how to deal with life. It's really sad.
Then, yeah, I feel like that stance would lead to you suppressing your sadness and then just an explosion of emotion eventually.
It certainly does, or it would lead to you medicating, right? I don't feel good, so I'm going to take a pill to deal with the sadness. I'm going to take a pill to deal with whatever. Guys, it's really sad.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Before we move on to the second big myth about results, any other questions out there?
Yeah. So you were talking about self-destruction, like when people get to this definition of modern success. You got any examples of that? Other than, I guess, your fake example of WALL-E, but anything from the real world?
What do you mean my fake example of WALL-E?
I mean, I like to think WALL-E was animated and made by a computer.
I was going to save this fact for later, but since you questioned me, what is the average weight of an adult male in 1970? The average weight of adult male.
186.
Adult male?
174.
Let's see. Back then, the average height was what? Probably like 5'7". So let's say 5'7", 172 pounds.
You guys are very close. It was 170 pounds.
Oh, close
in
enough.
In 2010, so 14 years ago, this is the best I could come up with that I felt was accurate, right? Because we only try to bring accurate stats here. 2010, what is the average weight?
Well, I'm gonna have to guess it's way higher. So
215.
I think 215.
I was going more like 196.
Yeah, I'm
all
gonna
right,
go.
Owen. It was 195. 195.
Goodness.
Guessing games.
And it's a lot higher now. And Eli, I will disprove your theory. The average height has not changed significantly.
Not even like 5'7" to 5'8".
Isn't
People
the average
are
5'4"?
in 40 years, the average weight went up 25
I'll agree.
pounds.
I'll agree that it's definitely, regardless of height change, it would definitely be. That's a big change.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Wally's not with AI now. We got automated vacuum cleaners. We got automated lawn mowers. We got automated self-driving cars. All of these things are designed to create comfort and ease, right? And it's just, it's not really that far-fetched. So back to your question, though. So what are some of the self-destructive and chaos behaviors, or what was your question again? Sorry.
Basically, you got any other examples of, outside of Wally, anything, examples of people self-destructing with this modern definition of success?
Yeah, I think it's another really sad topic, but suicide's at an all-time high, right? So we live in a world that is more successful than ever before, yet people are less satisfied with their life to the point that they're willing to take it. Drug use is rampant, alcoholism rampant, social media use, self-destructive behaviors like comparison rampant. And the more time, this is just my experience, the more time you have to be idle, which comes with comfort and control instead of having to do hard things, just the more self-destructive you tend to become. The more you worry, it leads to more worry, more anxiety, and just bad stuff. So, I don't want to call specific examples, but I think all of those behaviors are higher than ever before. And our ability to be comfortable and control our outcomes are higher than ever before. And to use a scientific idea, is it correlation or causation? I don't know, right? We could find studies that will say it's either, but are they factual statements? Yes. So is that helpful, or are you looking for something deeper or different?
That's good. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So the second myth is how you define success.
Dad, you want to flip yourself to the bigger screen again?
Do you want to produce, Eli? Do you want to be the producer? You want to come down here and be? No. Good call. Thank you for reminding me. All right, we're going to look at the second issue with how we define success, and that is there are too many people. How potentially hypocritical is this? There's too many people out there trying to tell you how to find your definition of success, what success lives life, how to live your life. And basically what I'm getting at is too many people allow their definition of success to be defined by someone who stands to make money or be successful themselves based on getting you to believe whatever it is that they say. And honestly, let's reflect. Very few of these people actually care about you being successful. They're not doing it so that they can help Owen, Eli, Evan, or Jonathan. They're just doing it to help themselves. So I always say, you guys know I say this to you, anytime you're consuming content or being influenced, you should ask yourself, why should I listen to this person? Why is this person worth taking the advice from? And question their motives. Not everybody's evil. Not accusing people of being evil. They just don't care as much about you as you should. And then this one's going to be controversial. This even could be your parents, right? So for you young folks, this could even be your parents, or if you're married, your spouse, or if you're dating, your person you're dating, or another role model in your life. Unless those people are really, really intentional about helping you personally become successful, it's just, they're not looking out for you. And I don't mean that negatively, like, oh, they're out to ruin your life or make it harder for you to succeed. That's not what I'm trying to say. It's just that is not their primary motivation. So unless they're being intentional every single day to say, hey, how am I going to help this person achieve their version of success? It's not what's happening. And like I said, I don't want to say that they're evil. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they're not intentionally helping you succeed. There's a huge difference between not being intentional and being evil. And all I'm saying is that there's a lot of people who aren't intentional about helping other people achieve success. They're trying to help you be successful in the same way that they were successful, and therefore it's not necessarily what's best for you. Whether your sources of success are coming from people in your direct life that you've never actually taken the time to say, hey, help me be successful, or people in the media or on TV or wherever you go these days to find people that you're trying to define success from. If you're not really intentional, you'd be surprised how easy it is to pick up a definition of success that you really don't even care about. So maybe you're busy trying to climb a mountain when you should be running sprints. Maybe you're busy trying to grow a fortune, the next great entrepreneur, when you should be out teaching kids how to live their best life, because that's really what you would like to do. Maybe you're trying to be a dual income, no kids type of relationship where you can just travel the world, but really what you want is to become a parent, and you just don't know because you haven't taken the time to intentionally live, and you're letting somebody else define your version of success. So that is the second myth. Before we move on to the third one, any questions here?
So if everybody, or at least the vast majority of people, are just worried about their own success and not really worried about your success, how do you figure out who you can actually trust?
All right. Eli, I think that's a fantastic question, right? So I think it's really important to engage in the process, engage others in the process, I guess I should say. And what I mean by that is when you talk about who can you trust to give this kind of guidance, or hey, who's really out there trying to help me, I would say, what's it, 1, 2, 3? I wrote down 4 things real quick while you were talking. One is people who take the time to ask you questions about you. So people who really take the time to get to know you. You know, who is Eli? Who is Evan? What's important to Owen? What are the skills that they have? So if someone takes time to get to know you, that's a good sign that you can trust their advice for you. Second is if they're willing to help you, right? So, hey, that's the thing you want to achieve. Evan, you want to start a landscaping business, right? I believe you have the skills to do that. How can I help you, right? People aren't going to offer to help you if they don't genuinely want to see you succeed. The third thing is people who respect your autonomy or your ability to be yourself. So if somebody says, "Oh, I think you're, Eli, I think you'd be a great, you should pursue basketball. You're really tall. You should be a basketball player," right? And you're like, you know what? I don't really enjoy basketball. I don't think that's what I want. Oh, no, you're not listening to me. You're really tall. You're an athlete. You should play basketball. That person's not respecting your autonomy or your personhood. So it's probably not someone who's good to take advice from about how you should set up for success. And the fourth one is you're looking for people who are willing to provide you feedback and challenge you, right? Like, oh, I'm just not so good at Owen's like, man, I'm just not really good at math. Oh, and sure, there's some parts of math that are tough, but I don't think that's overall true. Or someone who's like, hey, I think I'm amazing at blues guitar. And you've heard them play and they're terrible. You're going to want someone who will look at you and say, hey, you know what? You're really not that good. If you could maybe get good, but in order to be good, you're going to have to do more practice. So I think those are the 4 things. So if you're like, hey, who can I trust to actually help me? I would say people who ask about you, so people who ask questions and are genuinely interested in getting to know you so they can point you in a direction that matches your design. I would say people who are willing to help you and invest in you. I would say people who respect your autonomy, who aren't going to try to force things upon you and, no means no type stuff. And then people who are willing to provide you feedback or challenge you. What do you think of that answer? Good enough?
Yeah.
Third big issue with results is that most of the results that we define today are what I would call appetites. And basically an appetite is anything that you can feed and it just keeps getting hungrier and hungrier. We think about this a lot with food, right? Appetites, the big idea that's why you can go to a all you can eat buffet restaurant for dinner and you wake up the next morning and you're still hungry for breakfast, right? It's because food is an appetite. It's something that your body just begins to crave. And just because you get a lot doesn't mean you've gotten enough or you ever stop craving it. So I would say that's the third big issue, is that we just get to a point where we define the results we're trying to achieve as fulfilling these appetites. So more money, bigger house, more influence, bigger job, bigger title, whatever. Are there other examples of appetites that maybe are keen for you guys? Those are just some that I think of: money, houses, possessions, status.
I think money is the biggest one for most people. Definitely, probably the biggest for me. But
I think that's important to recognize, right? So these are some stats that maybe you're familiar with, but if you think about appetites, so we used the one about average weight. Used to be 170 pounds, and now it's 100. It was 195 in 2010, and I bet it's a lot more than that now. Even though people aren't getting taller. I'll talk about the self-storage industry. There are 51,000 self-storage providers across the United States. There are 2.4 billion square feet of self-storage space, and it's a $29 billion industry. So people are spending $29 billion to rent space to keep things that they own that they use so infrequently that they put them in a space. And I'm not making fun. Like, I know there are people who genuinely need these services, right? I'm moving. I got to put my stuff somewhere. I had a house fire. I need to put some stuff that didn't get burned somewhere. Like, there are legitimate reasons, but there are not 2.4 or 2.04 billion square feet of legitimate reasons that people need storage units. Average size of your house in 1970 was 1,500 square feet. 3 people lived in a 1,500 square foot house in 1970. In 2019, it's 2,500 square feet, and we're down to 2.5 people on average live in a house. So the houses are getting bigger at the same time that fewer people are living in it. These are just examples of indicators, these are just examples of appetites, right? I want a bigger house. I want more money. And despite the fact that we have more money, debt is skyrocketing, right? And then we get all this stuff and we put it in storage units that we then use our credit card to pay for the storage unit. It's insanity, but yet we do it. So you literally can never fulfill an appetite. And I think that's really important. And that's why this third myth about results is so important to talk about openly, because those are appetites. Money's an appetite. If most of the results you are trying to achieve, you can look at somebody else and say that person has more, then you're probably trying to achieve a result. And what I mean, if you have a bunch of money and you can look at Jeff Bezos and say he has more, you're trying to achieve an appetite. If you have a nice house and you look across the street and the person across the street from you has more money or has a bigger house, you're trying to chase an appetite. If you get to 100,000 followers and you're like, that person over there has got 1 million, you're chasing an appetite. These are all things that there is no ceiling to them. You're never satisfied. I think famous people get a lot of stuff wrong. They also get a lot of stuff right because they're just people. I love this Jim Carrey quote. He says, I think everyone should get rich and famous and do everything they ever dreamed so they can see that isn't the answer. And that's a guy who's gotten to do all those things. He's filthy rich. He's won awards. He's famous as all get out. He's probably got millions of followers and whatever socials he's on. And he's saying, look, that is not the answer. All right. So there's 3 myths about results that I thought were worth talking about before we talk about a better way. So let's talk about what is the alternative to living these myths. The alternative is living a life of significance where you actually feel successful in meaningful ways. And that involves getting the right results. Until next time, please, if you enjoyed what you heard, share it with a friend. Subscribe to the button, like and subscribe to this podcast wherever you find podcasts. We're on all the major platforms. We're also on YouTube. It's Doing Life Together podcast. Check us out online, doinglifepodcast.com or archimpacts.com. And we just really appreciate you.